Well, tell me, mama, what's going on? Tell me, darling, what's going on? I'm going back.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Bacon Egg Show. Bacon and Egg Show. Not bacon eggs or fried eggs or anything. It's bacon and eggs.
Runny eggs.
Yeah, it's sloppy, slimy eggs.
Better not. Better not.
Better not. Well, here we are, show number 29. Show that matches your age, Jay. So congratulations.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, happy to be here. Happy to be here. It's a good day, man. We got an off week for the Horns, so we're going to have a little discussion of the West Virginia game, and then talk a little bit about what's going forward, man. I'm excited about the show today.
Yeah, for sure. It's gonna be another Texas Longhorn heavy show. It's kind of the main thing that's going on right now. We could get into Texans, but who would want to do that? We could get into Cowboys, but who would want to do that? NHL, NBA stuff's kind of on, their abbreviated off season. There's going to be more action coming from that in a few weeks and months, but
yeah, it's crazy. Real quick, it is crazy how quick the NBA season is turning around now. Like, we're a month out of the scheduled start of their next season, and it's just interesting. We'll have a lot to talk about that as we get a little closer and how we think that's going to work out. But these turnarounds for these leagues, how are these older guys going to respond? The lack of rest and the lack of recovery. How much more will we see those guys resting during the regular season on back-to-backs and stuff like that? So it'll be cool to talk about that. We're in unprecedented times with all of this, and so a lot of things that we wouldn't really normally get to talk about, we're going to have a chance to. So that'll be fun down the road. And I know, man, I don't even know what to say about this Longhorn football team and how this season's gone, man. How do you want to attack this today?
Oh man. I mean, we'll pick up where we left off last show, and I think we both picked. Basically, we both kind of looked at opposite sides of the ball for both West Virginia and Texas, and kind of evaluated how we thought that those battles were going to play out. Did those battles play out the way that you thought they would?
Yeah, that was definitely a game where, watching it back, I thought we knew that West Virginia's defense was good. We knew that this was probably the best defense Texas had faced and maybe will face this season. But I didn't think that they would hold the Longhorns to 17 points.
Right.
That to me, to see that, and our magic numbers were both in the upper 20s or even low 30s in terms of what we thought it would take to win this game. Just thinking that these offenses were going to shine a little bit. And when we watched that game, we saw, in my opinion, a different sort of a matchup, sort of a football game than we really anticipated seeing.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and that's what, when we talk about like high 20s getting into the low 30s in the Big 12, that is like a fairly low scoring game. Like that's defenses are doing their jobs. Really, they're going to give up points in this league. But yeah, so that's where it is one of those funny things where if we would have had this discussion last week when we recorded this game preview, and one of us would have suggested that Texas was only going to score 17 points, I think both of us, our reactions would have been, well, then Texas probably loses this game.
Yeah, I would say
they're only scoring 17.
Blown out.
Yeah, and I
would say that's a 3-score game.
Yeah, probably. And I mean, and that's, I think we'll get back to the Texas offense and have that discussion, but I think that also says a little bit about how well this defense is starting to come around for the Longhorns. On the flip side of that, if you would have told me, or any of us would have suggested, that Texas was only going to allow 13 points against West Virginia, we're probably thinking it's a 3-score win for Texas.
Yeah.
You know, you go, oh, you hold West Virginia to 13. How many is Texas going to get? Well, they're going to probably score into the high 20s into the 30s at least. So that means, you
Right.
know, but that's not how this played out. A 17-13 game. We talked about this a little bit offline, but like I think West Virginia did leave some points on the field. I think they got a little ahead of
Absolutely.
themselves with trying to go for it on 4th down in a couple spots where if they would have just kind of stayed the course, kicked field goals, they very well may have won this game. And ifs and buts, but yeah, this one is a fascinating one for me. Where do you really want to dig in here? Do we want to start with this defense and before we start getting into the offensive discussion, or like what do you think?
Yeah, I think that let's talk about the defense, because the defense is the reason. Obviously, when you look at a scoring a final score like that, I think the defense is A1. Why uh, Tom Herman is breathing a little bit easier this week, going into a bye week off of a loss like that. That you want to be able to go into to a bye week and build on a couple of wins in a row, where people had already start to write you off as a coach. And I don't care how smart you are, if you're Mensa or if you're not. Those sort of personal, that gets to you. It affects how you operate as a person. It affects how you interact with people. If people know you're stressing, if people know that, oh damn, like I can see it on his face, they're going to react differently to you. So when you can exude that confidence going into a bye week and say, guys, we're heading in the right direction. This defense is playing well. We're going to figure it out. We know that we can score on offense. We'll get that figured out. Guys, we can still win the Big 12. I guarantee you that's the message going into this, or that what it's been this week so far, leading up to this next game, into a very winnable game. And it starts with the defense. I think looking at the fact that they're starting to cut down on their missed tackles, they're a little bit sure around the ball. We still see them, I would still like them to cut that number down some more, but
Yeah, of course.
pardon me, the fact that they're, as there's more practices, they're putting more hats on hats in practice. They're getting more reps at that. We're seeing a little bit more of a development in terms of tackling,
Right.
and that's going to have to continue to improve if we want, or if this team continues down this path that obviously we would like them to go down. So, what's another thing that, Kerry, that stood out to you with this defense?
Um, it's weird talking about this anything regarding this team, given how this season's kind of play out with using the word consistency. It's hard to just like it's an odd word to use with them right now, but the consistency you're seeing
Yeah.
from Joseph Osai, he's above and beyond, you know, the best player on this defense. So to see that consistency
Hmm.
from him on a week in, week out basis, even if he's not making the play, he's in the area, he's disrupting things, he's everywhere. Um,
Yeah.
Seeing
That's
that
the
kind
word.
of
He's a disruptor.
consistency,
Absolutely.
yeah, and seeing the consistency from him, I think starting to see consistency from guys like Overshone that are starting to I really kind of come into their own, is
Hmm.
encouraging. And those are guys we talked about before the season that were like, hey, these are, go ahead and pencil them in for being some kind of like key figures to watch. And you're starting to see that. Here we are, 3 games left in the season, but um, I think another thing that stood out for me on the defense is some of the guys that we've maybe been getting on, in a negative sense, Moro Ojimo, some of these guys that we've been kind of criticizing throughout the season. It looks to me like Chris Ash is starting to recognize, and again, this is his first year with this unit. I so
Yeah.
with a weird off season, I know, no excuses to really be made and all that kind of stuff. Their experience, they should have been playing better early on, but starting to recognize what these guys are good at and what they're not good at, and putting them in positions to succeed. If what Ojimo was doing for the first half of this season wasn't working, well, it looks like Ash has figured out where to put him. What technique should he be using? How are you going to use this player on defense? And it seems like they're figuring those things out, which is big because they're starting to string together some solid defensive performances. They're not perfect, but they're starting to look a lot better, which without going to, we'll stay on the defense for now, but which is something we're not saying about the offense and seeing with this offense. So
100%. I'm glad you focused on Ojimo, because he's somebody that I was really down on early on. And it turns out it's probably because he was not being put in the best place for his skills to be utilized. And it's like when we see these guys, Overshown being put into his new position and he's still adjusting, but man, he is explosive at times. And that's a guy that we've been talking about on this show since the start of the season of, man, when he's there, he's there. And when he's off, he
Yep.
is off. He's diagnosing well, and then he's missing tackles in the hole, or he's not diagnosing well, but he's getting there. He's getting there,
Right.
but it's 5 yards down the field, and there's things that we're seeing in his development at that linebacker position that is that's one of the most encouraging things for me on the team. Even though he came off the field a little bit more in that game, they were starting to get more people reps, but I don't mind that. Again, it's because they're going to put him into the best position. It seems like they're figuring out how to put him in the best position to be successful. So the fact that somebody might eat a little bit into his snaps, it doesn't bother me as long as that other guy isn't just absolutely, killing it killing the defense, I should say, when he's on the field. Like, they're figuring it out, man. I think Chris Ash is the best coach on campus, like, period. I think that when in our preview show before the season started, I said that Chris Ash was the thing that I was the most excited about seeing on this campus. And I think we're starting to see the development, sort of his hands on the moldable clay that are these young defenders. And we're really starting to see the reason that he was so highly sought after, and why many people were so excited about bringing him in.
Yeah. It's encouraging. We'll save a discussion for coaching changes and any potential kind of that stuff, I guess, as things play out or may or may not play out. But like, I think the thing that worries me has been, we've kind of seen this a little bit from some previous defensive coordinators with their first year on campus. They kind of, things start looking great. Looks like things are turning around, and then they get into year two and things start to slip away. And, we saw like Manny Diaz and, however many defensive coordinators there's been on campus over the past decade. But we'll worry about that when that time comes, because for right now, we are seeing that development. We are seeing that growth. It's encouraging. I mean, it's, they're going to get this defense is going to kind of be able to dictate whatever they want to do against Kansas next week. And then a couple interesting tests for them to finish out. So with Iowa State and Kansas State. So the defense is doing everything they can to put this team in a position to win on a week in and week out basis at this point now.
Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying in terms of what we've seen from previous defensive coordinators. But you can't meet the long-term development goals until you meet the short-term development goals, right? And I know that's what you're getting at. And he's checking those boxes right now. And to me, like, we knew Osai was a talented player. We've seen Joseph Osai, perform at the highest of levels. I think this season, as he's continued to develop, and I think a little bit more under Chris Ash, and get some of that stuff from him, we've seen him take it to another level. Some of these mock drafts have him going for end of the first round. All the big talking head, big boards, big draft boards, have him top 30, top 40 in terms of talent right now. So like that, and he was already well on his way, but we've seen him really take it to that next level this year. And I don't know if that's anything to do with Ash or if this is development, but you love to see that there's no regression there. He continued the path. There was no,
Right.
there was no holding him back in terms of getting there. And sometimes it's better when a coach can just get out of the way and know when not to fuck something up,
Right. Yeah.
and you like to, at least you like to see that from Ash as well. So this defense, if this defense is holding teams to under 20 a game, Texas has a looking at the defenses that Texas will face coming up, it changes the opinion of the ceiling maybe of this team from where we thought it might have been 2 or 3 weeks ago. Dramatically, when we're seeing these consistent performances from the defense, like you were talking about earlier, when they're building on these things, it sort of changes your mindset a little bit in terms of where this program can actually go. And whether or not that has anything to do with Tom Herman directly at this point, the fact that if he is able to be, if we look back at the end of this season and we say Tom Herman was able to be the CEO, he was able to take a step back and let the defensive coordinator do his job. He was able to, the offense struggled at times, but they did enough to win. Like, okay, then and we can get into this after, down the road, I guess, but like, would that change your opinion or our opinion of Tom Herman at all? And I think that when we talk about the eye test, Kerry, the eye test right now, they're playing winning football and they're getting it done with their defense.
The defense, yeah.
The eye test on the defense checks all the boxes.
Yes, it does.
So then how do we then, to turn over and talk about the offense a little bit? I would have to say that it's the exact opposite end of the spectrum at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a complete flip from the defense for me, because this defense, you mentioned the eye test. I mean, you think about the turnovers that they forced against Oklahoma State, the way that they're playing, the way that they played against West Virginia. I mean, in all those factors, when you watch it, they look like a good defense. They're not just getting lucky, or like,
right.
This offense, man, I don't know what. It's hard for me to really pin it down. Like, it's hard, it's really difficult for me, like, watching the game, there's no one thing that I can kind of pin it on and say, this is what's wrong. This is it. Fix that. This offense is going to get up and rolling. It's not just like the offensive line is terrible and, there's just no protection. They can't run the ball. And you go, well, hey, fix the offensive line and this thing will sort itself out. I'm confused by it. Like, I know there's been talk, like, is Sam hurt? Has he been playing with an injury? Or is this his ceiling? Have we seen the ceiling with him? Kind of thing. Like, that's where I don't know. It's hard to, like, look at it and just go, oh, well, this is just this one thing, fix it. I don't know what to do with this offense. And that's where you mentioned the Tom Herman thing. I wonder how much of that is he meddling into the offense? Is he not allowing Yurcich to really basically be like Chris Ash and take full control over his unit of the team and giving that trust over? And that's where I don't know what to do with evaluating this offense. I don't know what to say about it.
Well, and our trust level for Tom Herman is for me anyway, is extremely low at this point to believe that he knows when to take a step back and when, I don't trust the guy at this point.
Right.
To know when to be like, all right, you got it. Because it would appear that the offense has taken a step backwards. When you can't pinpoint the problem, when there's nothing that's glaring, and granted, I wouldn't say the offensive line has been a plus by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
No, but it's a thing for me where it's, they're still doing the same running back rotation. The carries were basically split exactly three ways on last Saturday. There's Sam's inconsistencies, with what was 15 for 31. That just for 184 yards, 2 scores. He ran the ball 12 times for 39 yards. That doesn't seem like a Sam Ellinger stat line, like
No.
if I had to guess, Kerry, I would say that there's something going on with Sam. Like I don't know that. I don't have any
Right,
intel
right,
on that. Nobody has given me any information on that. But
right.
watching football, watching a guy even when he was at his worst, have, to the eye test at least, look like a better football player than we've seen Sam Ellinger look like
Yeah.
over recent weeks. And that's why I would, if I had to guess anything, I have a feeling that there's something up with Sam right now.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, there's one of the local shows here was kind of having a similar discussion the other day about, what could be going on with Sam, what could be the issue here. And, he accepted an invite this week to the Senior Bowl, which great for Sam. That's another opportunity for him to put some stuff on tape and kind of, enhance his NFL draft stock. And the insinuation from listening to the discussion was kind of like, is Sam basically kind of done with this coaching staff? If it's not so much like an injury thing, is there, a sense of frustration from him with how this offense is being run, all those things, which I feel like can bleed over into performance. If he doesn't have full faith in whether it's Tom Herman, Mike Irisich, any of these guys, if he doesn't have full faith in the system that they're running and what they're asking him to do, all those kinds of things, he's not going to look like the kind of gunslinging Sam that we saw his first couple years on campus. And that's where, like, well, if he can come back for another year, well, that's what's going to be interesting for me about whether or not this coaching staff is still in Austin or not. Like, I know we've talked about Urban Meyer up and down. If you're Sam, does an Urban Meyer kind of change that scenario where you go, okay, well, maybe I do come back for one more year? Because I don't know where his NFL draft stock is right now. The arm strength doesn't look to be there. His accuracy doesn't seem to be there right now. Again, he could be hurt, but to me, he just doesn't look like he does. We talk about these like Big 12 quarterbacks that have come out the last few years, the Kyler Murrays, the Baker Mayfields, these guys that run these air raid kind of spread offenses and use their legs quite a bit. Sam's not there to either any of those guys.
Well,
to me,
no,
from what he's been doing on
agree.
tape and how his actual performance on the field, you don't see that same kind of skill set from him. And I wonder if that, I don't know. I don't want to presume too much about his feelings about the coaching staff and his prospects, but it's interesting, frustrating to see.
I think he has an NFL future, and I think he knows where his floor is in terms of being drafted or getting signed to a team, and I think he knows where his ceiling is in terms of a draft stock. And I think he's a late round quarterback in this draft that's coming out. We've never said that Sam was a first round guy.
Oh, no.
We've always, but we always knew that we always felt like he would get drafted. And I think I hadn't heard that he'd signed or taken the Senior Bowl invite. But these signs to me, they do tell me that he knows he's not coming back next year.
Right.
I think Sam is done. I think he's made that decision already. especially with the fact that, the picture of him standing alone for the Eyes of Texas after the game,
Yeah.
how that must have felt for him at that point. I can't imagine. This guy's wanted to be a Longhorn quarterback since he was, knee high to a duck. The feelings that he has for this university, the love that he has, the passion that he has, we're not seeing it right now from him. We're not seeing that on the field. It's not coming out in his play. And I don't know if that's because he's not, because the offensive coordinator is not putting him into positions to be able to have the fun that he was having before when he was having those big video game number type games. And who knows, but it's not translating right now for him. His game, the peak of his skill set is not translating right now. So whether he's injured, whether mentally he's checked out, I don't know what it is, but it's not showing on the field. And the fact that, it finally, and granted, it was on the same amount of carries as Roshan Johnson and Sam both had the other night, but the fact that Bijan finally got that 100-yard game, showed those flashes of being the guy that we know Bijan Robinson is, and who we've been calling for since the beginning of this season to have a larger role. We know who that guy is. And the fact that they're still insisting on splitting these carries the way that they are, to me, is ridiculous. But we know what he's capable of, and if the coaching staff can get Bijan Robinson in that sort of a rhythm and start putting him into those open spaces and letting him do what he's best at, do that consistently, then let's focus on how we can get Sam rolling. The Kansas game, to me, is going to speak volumes in terms of where Sam will be for the rest of the season. If he comes out like a ball of knives and just attack, and this offense is firing off on all cylinders, and the defense is playing like it should against a piss poor Kansas team, bad Kansas team, it's going to make me feel a little bit better about Sam's, prospects moving forward for the rest of the season. And the way that this can play out, Kerry, this team can still play for a Big 12 championship, can still win a Big 12. It sort of reminds you of the team that won the very first Big 12 championship, to where I think that team lost 4 games that year. They weren't a team that had the expectations going in that they could possibly contend for a national championship, but they were this sort of meddling team that had their peaks, had their valleys, and then they found a way to get into the Big 12 championship game. And we all know what happened there. James Brown saying, well, maybe we'll win by 20, maybe we'll win by 3 touchdowns, and then him being the badass that he is, led that team. And then the one of the best play calls in the history of this program, clinched that game. So, man, I just got nostalgic there for a minute, man.
That was a good one. That was a fun. That's always welcome here. That was that was a great day and a great
It is so nice to talk about times in Texas football that made us happy, man.
Right.
It's fun to talk about this program in a light that I just don't feel so negative about. It's just been so hard to do that as this season has progressed. It's become more and more difficult to those of you that have watched our show consistently, know that we want this program to be successful. It's just the fact that it's frustrating to see that the direction that it's gone, and it's hard to be positive at times when we're watching this team week in and week out under Tom Herman not get over the hump. And to watch this defense play this consistently is great. What's going to happen with the offense for the rest of this season? Are they going to say, okay, it's Bijan Robinson's show. This offense is based around him now. And then everything that we're going to do, which, I know that's pie in the sky stuff, but man, just to, again, what's this team's identity, Kerry? We still haven't answered
There-
that question on offense, at least.
There's still
We've been
not
asking
one.
that question for a while now. There isn't one, man.
Yeah.
And maybe there's not going to be one this season, and they're just going to have to get by the skin of their teeth, and the defense is going to have to carry this team. Okay, sometimes that's how you win football games, but maybe we're just going to have to resign to the fact that they don't have an identity on offense and will not.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the case with the offense. I think the defense is their identity is forming, and there's going to be an identity with that group by the end of the season. Sets up for an interesting offseason if Chris Ash is the defensive coordinator next season, given that Osai is probably gone, Caden Stearns is probably gone,
right.
But that's what we'll talk about. Yep. We can get to all that in due time. But like, I as we're talking about this, I find it interesting that the way that we are describing Texas and the way that they've been playing and kind of what we're seeing in this team here at this point of the season in terms of their development and finding those identities and all those things. If we were talking about this group this way in year one of a head coach's tenure, I think the tone of the conversation is completely different. Because the way we're talking about this team is, this is what, like, the stuff that you want to see in year one from a new, like, regime, from a new head coach, developing identity. Here we are over halfway through the season. The defense is starting to come around. We're starting to see those like hopeful signs that there's some development and consistency happening. Not in year four. And that's what just strikes me. And with thinking about this is just like, as we've had these conversations of like, well, hey, if they can do this and finish out the season strong, they have a chance to play for the Big 12, all these things. It's like, well, that's great. Like this is the way that we should be talking about this program in year one of a head coach. Like Mac Brown's first year, those types of seasons where they're coming off of, where you see some growth and some hope and development. Are they going undefeated? No, they're going to lose some games, some tough ones, some ones they're probably supposed to win, and all go through those growing pains. We shouldn't still be seeing growing pains in year four.
Well, and that to me, when we hit the reset button before this season started with basically an entirely new coaching staff, I think that's what they're finding. Yeah. Those new coaches are finding their rhythm at this point,
right?
Which is what you would expect to see from a first-year coach in a new program, right. Exactly how you described it. The problem is, and I've said this so many times on this show, Tom Herman as a head coach doesn't know what his identity is. So it doesn't matter to me. You can rotate in all the different coordinators you want underneath the head coach. But if the head coach doesn't know what his identity is, if he's still learning, that he's a young head coach,
right? He's
learning who he is still. Normally at this point in somebody's tenure, they'd be at Texas State, not Texas. That to me is where, Jake Spavital down in San Marcos is learning who he is as a head coach right now. They played Boston College super tough. We're tied with them in the fourth quarter this year. They scored a couple of touchdowns against BYU. But they're playing. He is learning. He's using this time at Texas State to figure out who he is as a head coach. Tom Herman is doing the same thing in Austin right now on the 40 acres. And this isn't the place to cut your teeth, man. No. And that's what we're seeing right now. That's why we're seeing this program struggle, is because it's not because of a coordinator issue. I truly believe that Chris Ash is the best coach, the best football coach on the campus right now. But that doesn't matter if Tom Herman's a good enough head coach to know to get the hell out of the way,
right,
and let him do his thing.
Right.
We've seen head coaches win conference championships and maybe even a few national championships by just knowing to get the hell out of the way.
I wonder how much of it being
if Herman
Chris, or sorry. I was just going to real quick, how much of that with Chris Ash and Tom Herman has to do with the fact that Chris Ash was a head coach at a Power 5 school in the recent past? Like, is there a respect factor where Ash can come back to Herman and be like, I know what I'm doing? Like, back off a bit. That he might not have that same ability to do that with a Mike
Yeah.
Yurcich and some of these other guys on the staff where he wants to meddle. And maybe Chris Ash is like,
Yeah.
dude, back off. I
With,
coached at a Big Ten school. I know they suck, but I'm a head coach before. I've been a head coach before.
yeah, but that to me even further, really shines on the fact that he's not ready to be a head coach
Right,
yet.
right,
If you're
right.
not confident
Of course.
enough, if you're not confident enough to not meddle, if you're not, you
Right.
have an offensive coordinator. You didn't come in thinking, I'm Tom Herman. I'm doing this. This is what I'm going to do, and I'm always going to call the plays. No, like you have a coordinator. You've got a guy there that you brought in with a pedigree to do this job. Get the hell out of the way. You shouldn't have to have been a head coach. I agree with your point, and that may be the way that this is going down. But it's in terms of the maturation of Tom Herman as a head coach at this level, he is not there yet. It is so evident to me that he is not matured to the level of being his peak head coaching abilities. He's not at that point yet. And does this program have the time to let Tom Herman, stop being the ugly duckling and turn into the swan, or however that story goes? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so I'll ask this question. I know this would be a good one for whenever we're able to get Mike back on next week, I think, before the Kansas game. But we've got three games left.
That'll be good to have him back on. Yeah.
Yeah. So we can go into this a little deeper if you think, but I mean, with 3 games left on the schedule,
Mm-hmm.
we'll just keep it to these 3 games because there may or may not be a Big 12 championship that Texas is involved in, depending on how those go. But we'll just say for these final 3 regular season games,
Mm-hmm.
what does Tom Herman and this, by extension, the team, need to do to reassure your feelings about the direction of this program being positive heading into next season? If that can be done.
Win.
So if they go 3-0 in these final 3, you're feeling better, or maybe, I mean, obviously feeling better, but you think Herman has earned his way into another season, or that's something that gives you more confidence about his direction of the program?
If Texas wins out, that's what, 5? That'd be 5 in a row.
Yeah, I picked him to go 8-2
Is that right?
this season.
That'd be 5 wins, 6 wins in a row. That'd be 6 wins in a
Yeah,
row.
it would be 6 in a row.
If Texas wins out, which a lot of our negativity around discussing this program and a lot of our thoughts in terms of where this football, where like they would finish up in terms of their final record and how we would view this team after the season, was based upon the fact that we didn't think there was a chance in hell this team would win out. That was the thought process. Is we looked at that football team at the mid-season mark, and there's no way in hell I thought they would have a chance to win out. Period.
Oh no, it looked like
And
there was about 3 more losses on the schedule at the halfway point when they were coming out of that ugly run, and you looked at the schedule, you're thinking, God, there's pre-Oklahoma State game and those things, like this is a team that could easily lose 3 more. We're talking a 5-5 type season, a real
when we're looking
cratering.
Should have lost to Texas Tech. There's no way in hell they should have lost to TCU, but somehow TCU is not good. They're not a good
they're
football
terrible.
team.
They're awful.
And we're gonna look back at when we're wrapping this season up and look at that loss on the schedule and how the hell did that happen? But at Texas Tech's not in Texas Tech, that game shouldn't have. Anyways, the point is we go from TCU, Oklahoma, the Oklahoma loss, the back-to-back losses there, and then Texas finds a way to beat Baylor. They go to Oklahoma State, go to Stillwater, and get a win. And then they get a West Virginia team that they've struggled with since they entered this conference.
Yep.
Especially at home.
Yeah, in
struggled
Austin,
with.
especially. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's saying something when you're comparing playing West Virginia and Austin compared to Morgantown. But that they struggled with them in Austin as well. So, I mean, that to me, we're starting to see what we wanted to see in terms of the development of this team, finding ways just to win. Just win. Winning cures a lot. Winning cures everything. If your football team is good enough to find ways to win, this team isn't as talented as the 2005 team that won the national title. I think that's not going out on a limb. But even that team had to find ways to win.
I don't know. That's a
You know?
little bit of a reach, Jay.
But even that team had
Little
to
bit of a reach.
find ways to win a couple of games. Yeah, I know. A little bit.
Easy.
Maybe. But
Easy.
the point is if you're finding ways to win football games, that's all that matters. And if you can tell me that this team will finish on a 6-game winning streak, they found ways to win. They found a way to beat Oklahoma State. They found a way to beat West Virginia and sort of get a monkey off of their back in a way. Now, what does the rest of this season look like? If they're winning, if they're finding ways to win, you know, I don't want to see them have to beat Kansas on a game-ending field goal. But if they're finding ways to win, if we see them turn around against a well-coached Iowa State team, that to me is the test. And in terms of how we're going to be able to view this team for the going into the offseason is what do they look like against Iowa State? Not even having to win. Winning would make me feel like, obviously, if they win out, that Tom Herman is back easily. Obviously.
Oh yeah. I think so.
But even if he loses against Iowa State, you know, winning cures everything. But even if you get a loss against Iowa State and you pass the eye test, this is all about optics, man, for me at this point. And if the optics are there, fine. You asked me what would it take for me to just totally, you know, be comfortable with Herman coming back, and winning is the key there.
Yeah.
I would be able to at least consider it if they're passing the eye test against Iowa State. They can't lose any of these other games, though. You can't lose to Kansas or Kansas State, period. But I'm willing to have a discussion if the Iowa State game passes the eye test.
Yeah, I think they need to win out. I think winning out, God, and that's what thinking that would put them at 8-2, which I believe was my prediction before the season. They were going to go 8-2. Didn't quite play out the way I was maybe thinking that 8-2 would play out, but I mean, if they did that, it's hard to, you know. I guess my issue with this is you nailed it, like the eye test aspect of it. This is a team that just plays down to competition constantly. It's hard. It seems like it's a chore for them, except against like UTEP, to really out talent and just beat a team. And that's what worries me about going to Kansas. It's what worries me about going to Kansas State, is that they're going to make these games closer than they should be. Iowa State's a good team. That's another, like, if they get a win against Iowa State, it's one of those, like, who cares how it looks? If you beat that group in Austin, that's a talented Iowa State team, a well-coached Iowa State team. You beat them. I don't care how it looks. It's like when we were talking about the Oklahoma State game, like the offense struggles and like all those things, like go in there and get the win. Who cares how it looks? Whatever luck you may have needed to get it, you know, for it to happen. I think if they went out, I mean, yeah, I think if it went out and play for a Big 12 championship, even if the standings don't shake down the right way and they finish 8-2 and not play for a Big 12 championship, I definitely think Herman's back. But I mean, we'll see. We'll see. I don't know how much that would ease my concerns about him and his direction with the program, but finish 8-2 on a 6-game run, I don't see him being fired is basically what it comes down to. And then we'll reset it next year and I'll adjust my expectations accordingly. But
Yeah. Well, I think the fact that we're even considering him being able to be around here after the fact that, we were ready for him to, if he lost in Stillwater, I was ready for them to leave him on the don't even, leave him on the runway and leave him in Stillwater at that point. They found a way to win, and it are we watching the maturation of Tom Herman as a head coach? Are we seeing it in real time? And that's going to be the answer that we'll get after these last 3 games is he taking the next step forward to becoming the guy that he needs to be if he's going to actually contend for national titles at Texas? If this team is going to consistently, kick teams' asses that they should kick and play teams that they're, in terms of talent wise and ability wise and the programs that play tough. Yeah, you play tough games, but you win most of those. You're supposed to. You're Texas, right? At least that's what we've been made to. We've been conditioned to think. So the it does matter. The eye test does matter to me, but Kerry, it's winning. It's finding ways to win. As a head coach, your job is to do one thing, and it's win ball games. And if you can find a way to do that, it cures everything else. The eye test matters, but if you're winning, I don't care what it looks like. It's obvious to me that you're going to find ways to lose games playing that way more often than you find ways to win them. But if you're winning, I don't care. And until he finds a way to consistently win, that's going to hinder this program from taking the next step. If Chris Ash is the guy that I think he is, he can single-handedly save Tom Herman's job.
yeah,
by helping this team finish strong this year, by helping this team continue to develop. If his defense continues to improve, even with the loss of an Osai and the Stearns, which are coming, I think we both feel the same way that those guys are gone after this season. But
Oh,
if we
yeah.
can continue to see the development, and if this scheme can continue to develop guys like an Ojamo, and we've seen the development. We've seen him figure out how to put people into positions to be successful. The more he becomes comfortable with the talent on this campus, the easier it's going to be for Chris Ash to be successful, to be at his peak. So as long as Tom Herman can find a way to stay out of it, can find a way to stay out of his way, I think that can be the reason that Tom Herman keeps this job for years to come, to be honest, because if he's here as the defensive coordinator and we continue and he's the coach that I think he is, then this defense is going to keep this program in that at where their floor will be 8-2. Or I should say, if we're looking at a 12-game season, the floor is like 9-3. Which would have been like, when we're talking Mac, it's like when the floor was a regular season at 9-3. And then it's just a matter of, okay, how are we going? What's the variation from there? That's what we wanted to get to, right? Like we long for the days of the consistency of Mac Brown, where you knew you were going to win a ton of games and you were always right on the cusp. This team doesn't feel like it's on the cusp of shit right now. So
No.
let's continue to get there. Even if they play for a Big 12 championship this year, it just doesn't feel like they're on the cusp of winning a national championship, which is what you come to the University of Texas to do, allegedly.
Well,
it's why you come to coach here, so.
And I think the recruiting, I know we've hit on this over the last few weeks, the changes or what's the fallout, the cratering that's been happening in the recruiting scene for Texas has reflected. I think recruits feel the same way. This doesn't feel like a program on the cusp of big things. I think that there was that excitement there for these recruits, Quinn Ewers and these other guys that were committed that have since decommitted. And I agree with you in the sense of like, they finish out strong. I think you can say that Chris Ash has basically saved Tom Herman's job for another year, but then what next year? I mean, like, I think it is kind of establishing that ceiling and floor like you were talking about, but where, I just don't know where that buzz, where that feeling of big things on the horizon is going to come from in that situation. Enough to the sense of, I mean, Texas is still going to get good players, but enough buzz and enough enthusiasm to get over that hump with getting the best players and not losing, generational type quarterbacks to Ohio State from inside the state of Texas, or losing a guy like Bowman, who was by all accounts
Yeah.
a born and raised, Texas fan, going to Oklahoma because of those quotes that we mentioned before about, coaches knowing what they're doing and wanting to play for championships and all those things. To me, that's just, and that's the thing for me, the dark cloud that's hanging over this program, regardless if Tom Herman in this group wins out, is I don't think it does enough. I don't think it does enough to change the perception from what happened earlier this season and how recruits feel about Tom Herman at this point. I don't. I feel like that's a hard thing to kind of go back on at this point.
You know how you change recruits' perspectives? You win and you put guys into the draft. This year, Texas will have guys in the first round.
Yes.
At least one.
I think so.
Cosme's a first round guy to me. Like I think just based his position, what the rest of the tackles look like coming out, I think Cosme's a first round guy. And then there's a case to be made, especially if a team at the end of that draft falls in love with him, for Joseph Osai to be a first round guy as well, or at worst a second round guy, in my opinion. So when you start, if you win out and the cards or the dominoes fall all in your favor, and you get to play in a Big 12 championship game, and who knows, you maybe even win it, and then you're sitting there on a badass, you're on a hot streak finishing the season, you're winning trophies, and you're putting people into the draft. It's a real quick way for Tom Herman to help himself right here. And it's by finding a way to win these games. Win out, man. Even if you don't play for a Big 12 championship, show these recruits you know how to win football games as a head coach. Because that's not these recruits. This isn't an indictment of the coordinators. That these recruits are leaving. This is an indictment of Tom Herman. Saying that the coaching staff that knows what they're doing, that is a direct shot at Tom Herman and nobody else. And until the wins start to come and the draft picks start to come, he has a chance right now to shift it a little bit in his favor because of who he has coming out in the draft. He can check both of those boxes right now if they can find a way to win out. I think he can do it. We will know where he is. Again, there will be so many stories told by the end of this season in terms of where Tom Herman is as a head coach, where this program is in its development, where this offense is in its development. There will be so many, and I don't care how they finish. We'll have a lot of those answers.
Oh, yeah.
Period.
Yeah, it'll be answered.
And Tom Herman has a way to start to rewrite his legacy right now by making these things happen. Yep. Can he do it? I don't trust him to walk my dog right now, to be quite honest. And I don't even have a dog, if I tell you
exactly.
So,
see,
so I mean that's about as far as as much as I trust Tom Herman at this point to figure it out in the time frame that he needs to figure it out to save his job by getting recruits.
Yep.
And by winning, and then you get the recruits and you win consistently. it's a flat circle, man. You know, it's everything we've ever done or will do, we're going to do over and over and over again. And is Tom Herman going to be able to break free of to break free of this repetitiveness, because he doesn't have another opportunity to hit the reset button?
No, no, we're going to learn everything we need to know over the next 3 games. He loses 2 of these 3, I think we then very well will know. But
if he loses one and it's the wrong one, I think we'll know. You can beat Iowa State and lose to Kansas State, and that's it for me. I'm sorry, like that to me. I mean, I've already pretty much written this guy off. I mean,
yeah,
if we're being completely honest, I've written Tom Herman off as being the right person for the Texas football job. Like, I don't. We have the discussion about what it's going to take to bring him back in the good graces and all that stuff. I've written him off as not being able to check all those boxes off. Okay, I don't think he's the guy, but there's a path for him to do it.
right.
And like you said, we'll know at the end of this season. But for me, beating Iowa State would be a great win. But if you turn around then and you go to Manhattan, Kansas, and you lay an egg, that fool me once, shame on me, or you fool me twice, you won't get fooled again, right? Isn't that how it goes? So
that's one version of it, at least. I think that was.
Yeah. So I mean, that to me, it will speak volumes, and we will know if he is maturing as a head coach, if he is developing as a head coach, or if this is just Tom Herman and we know what his ceiling is. This program, a football program ceiling lies completely on the shoulders of its head coach. Is Tom Herman's ceiling a win over Georgia? Is that his ceiling? Or are we going to see, like we saw a glimpse of what he can be as a head coach at the University of Texas, and that was, it was like, are we going to see him have more of those sort of signature victories, like an Oklahoma State win, which was impressive to find a way to win that game? But is a regular season game in Stillwater and a bowl game against Georgia, is that your legacy? Then it's not good enough.
Yeah, no, it's not. And that's what, just got to start putting some hardware in the cabinet. And that's where I think finishing out this season strong and playing for it. To me, I think winning the Big 12 would go a long way towards kind of taking some heat off of that hot seat. And
Yep.
But yeah, we're going to learn everything. They go up to Lawrence, and look, I mean, they're going to win that game. They better win that game. But like, they go up to Lawrence and start screwing around and looking like a team that's just kind of going through the motions. I mean, and again, it's that eye test, and we'll see. We hopefully have Mike on next week. We'll get into some game picks on that. But yeah, it's an interesting time. The bye week, I think, comes at a advantageous time for Herman in the program, especially coming off those wins. I think this is a good break.
And that's the old cliche, the bye week couldn't have come at a better time. And we'll hear Herman say that, I bet, on Monday. But to be fair, it's absolutely true. I feel, to be able to have a whole week of not having to necessarily prepare for a game, but to be able to continue to instill confidence in your team, like, we are turning the corner. We are doing things the right way. We are having this additional bye week in the middle of the season to continue that development and really work on more fundamentals, continuing to work on the fundamentals that we've seen developing, like tackling, like not missing, like not giving up your gap as a defensive lineman, like not running not giving up the edge, not, things like that. We're seeing those little things are developing, and all of those, obviously everything I just said was defensively, because we haven't seen as much development from the offense. But I think that really speaks to, we know how this football team is going to be successful moving forward, and I don't think it's going to be necessarily because of the offense. But if we're starting to see those things, it's like, man, what's the ceiling here, man? What's the ceiling? What's the floor? What can it be? We don't know. And it's the fact that we have this much uncertainty about Tom Herman at this point. It's really why after 4 years, I've sort of made my decision on him. But again, build that momentum, win. If you win, even without getting to play for a Big 12 title, if you win out, winning puts a new
Here's a
shade of
lot.
lipstick. It puts a new shade of lipstick on that pig, buddy.
Does some nice glittery,
Yeah.
glossy
Maybe even,
lipstick.
yeah, maybe even it's not lipstick. Maybe it's like a lip gloss, just with
Yeah.
a sort of a sheen. You don't. It could, maybe it's even like maybe it's a turquoise. It's Tom Herman seems like the kind of pig that would wear turquoise lip. I don't even know where I'm going with this, man. Let me take a step back.
Well, that's a good, I think that's probably a good place to leave it there. Let's see, a little bye week, you know, exercise. Think about what shade of lipstick, if Tom Herman were a pig, would work for these final 3 weeks of the season. So we'll ask Mike that
This
next
is where
week.
we are with this. This is where he'll have an answer, I'm sure.
Yeah.
This is where we are with this. This is where we are, man.
Yeah.
I hope we can win some football games and really start to put it together. We really barely talked about the offense today. They're not getting the right guys the ball. Real quick, I just want to say, let me look at this box score because
Well,
I want to make sure I have this right.
Yeah, on the Bijan Robinson thing, he's got to be more. His touches need to go up significantly. There's only so many carries, so many touches that he's going to have at this university, and you need to get the ball into his hands as much as you can before he's moved on to the NFL. And
I agree 100%. Like this is what we've been calling for this, man.
yeah, that needs to happen.
The Malcolm Epps having one catch for 3 yards makes me want to throw my phone. Like, why is he not more involved? I don't understand this, like, at all. If this is Tom Herman meddling, and it seems like the type of thing that would mean, let's be like, well, we don't really need the tight ends. Let's focus on this. Is the guy is massive. He is a weapon. He is an absolute weapon. I don't understand. I mean, we're still looking at, Jake Smith, 3 catches, Brendan Eagles, 4 catches, Tariq Black only had 1 catch.
That's another
Brendan
one.
Schooler. Yeah, I mean, like, these guys, they're not using these guys. That to me, I think, is where this offense is. Yurcich hasn't figured out yet how to put these guys into positions to be successful within his scheme, and Chris Ash has. And I think that's why we're seeing this huge gap in terms of one side of the ball not being developed. Chris Ash is that good of a coach where he's been able to, through half a season, figure it out. And I don't think Yurcich still knows what he has at his fingertips yet. It's just, when we look at receiver catches over the course of that game, 7, 8, 9 receptions by a wide receiver total in that game. It's just, I don't understand what he's trying to do. If you're not going to feature Bijan Robinson, I don't understand what the point of what he's trying to accomplish, and or what whoever is deciding what this game plan is going to be, whether it's solely Mike Yurcich, or if we're talking about a Tom Herman can't stay out of the offensive room thing here. I don't understand where. I don't get what they're trying to do at all.
I forget which press conference it was, a Monday press conference. I forget which game it was after, and the question was asked about why isn't Jared Wiley getting more catches? Like, or do you want to get Jared Wiley more involved in the offense and all those kinds of things? And I remember Herman answering the question, and this doesn't just apply for about Jared Wiley, but I think these questions about the offense in general, his response was along the lines of, we do what the defense allows us to do. The defense dictates where we go with the ball. And to me, that is such a flawed way of building an offensive philosophy or an identity and all those kinds of things. With the exception of, I mean, I mean, just the talent level that Texas has. At what point, I, how do you have that mindset when you've got a senior quarterback, you've got the playmakers that you have on the offensive side of the ball, where you go, well, yeah, we'd love to get Jared Wiley or, name a player more involved, but the other team is going to decide what we do. And to me, that just summed it all up. Like, have
It's
some
such a
confidence in
defeatist
your,
attitude.
yeah. Like, Greg Davis caught so much hell while at Texas for the way that he ran an offense sometimes, with, being conservative, doing all those things. But like, did you ever really feel like it was one of those things where it was like, well, we're going to let the defense dictate what we do? It felt like, at least with Greg Davis, it was kind of like, we're going to do what we do. Now, whether we put the foot on the gas or not is another thing, but like, you never got that vibe, because they're like, well, we're Texas. We can out talent everybody, with the exception of maybe one or two teams on a roster in a given year, depending on what Oklahoma's got and, bowl game or something like that. But like, you just never had that vibe, that kind of like defeatist vibe about it. Was it bland and boring and too conservative sometimes? Sure. But they executed their game plan the way that they wanted to execute a game plan. They didn't get into a situation and go, oh, well, this team doesn't want Jared Wiley to catch the ball today, so we're not going to throw it to him. Like, come on. Go out there and beat the other team. And so that, and just to wrap that kind of back around, like, that's kind of where I feel like Tom Herman is a little too involved potentially with this offense and what's going on. I just don't, when you hear things like that, it's extremely discouraging. Go out strategize a team, go beat them. Are they going to go up to Lawrence and let KU, that defense, determine what they're going to do on the offensive side of the ball that day? That's absurd. Like,
Yeah.
go beat them.
If you that the only kind of team that says something like that the defense dictates what they're doing is one that doesn't have an identity.
Right.
If you know who you are as a coach, and you know what you need to do to be successful, and you're recruiting the types of players to be successful in your scheme, you dictate how they're successful, because you're going to do this consistently. You know what works, you know what doesn't. You're going to be able to put them into positions to be successful because you have an identity. You know who you are as a coach.
Right.
Tom Herman doesn't know who he is as a coach. And I don't think that he's letting Mike Yurcich handle this on his own. I think that we will hear, after the season, we'll hear whispers that Tom Herman was still heavily involved in the offensive play calling, and that the only reason that Chris Ash didn't have that same sort of thing is because of what you described earlier, where Chris Ash looks at him and is like, dude, fuck off. Like, you don't need to be in my room. I'm developing this team, or this side of the ball. Like, I got this. Go worry about the other shit that you need to worry about as a head coach. I just feel like those are the sort of whispers we're going to hear after this season, the sort of reports, internal, when we get the reports from Belmont sort of thing, that
Right.
we're going to hear that
Yeah.
Tom Herman was still meddling in the offensive room when he should have been being a head coach. So, because he can't help it. He can't help it. It's who he is.
Right.
That's who he is.
Yep.
Right now as a head coach. He can't help it. He can't help but meddle. He can't help but have his fingerprints on something. He can't help it. I just feel like he can't help it. His ego is too big. How he thinks of himself. Well, it's his ego. He's too much in his own head.
Yep.
To be able to let that go, in my opinion. And we're seeing that. Chris Ash got it on lock. He's there. Don't worry about me. But I think you made that great point earlier to sort of put a bow on this with the offense, that like he's just too involved, and Ash was able to tell him to go away, and Yurcich is like, yeah, man, you're the head coach. That's, what are we gonna do? You're the genius here, right?
Right. Well, I just think about it like, to wrap this up, to tie this back in with the recruiting aspect. If you're an offensive
Mhm.
player and you're talking to Tom Herman and you go, well, hey, like, I'm a 5-star quarterback. I'd like to come here and throw it 40, 50 times a game, and spread the ball around and show my arm off and do those things. Can I come to Texas and do that? What does Tom Herman say? Well, I don't know. It kind of depends on what the defense gives us that day. We're going to,
Damn it, man. Yeah.
like, how do you, and that's what I just, like, how do you, if you're a 5-star running back, well, hey, I'd like to come to Texas and get 20, 25 touches a game. Can I do that? Well, I don't know. It depends on what the defense dictates to us. Like, it's just,
Yeah, but if you're recruiting those types of guys, if you're getting those guys, it's because you have an identity, right? It's because you know what you're going to be, and he doesn't. He can't. You're exactly right, man. He can't walk into that living room right now and say and give anything, because there's been no consistency. Like that, nobody knows what this is going to look like. You, as a defender, you can look at this team right now and say, all right, I see what's going on there. Their head football coaches, their high school head football coaches, are telling them, look what he's done with Ojimo in a short amount of time. Look at how they've moved Overshown into this position and developed him. Caden Stearns is going to go into the league. Like, all of these things on the defensive side of the ball are starting to become what you need it to be in order for those coaches and those players to be like, all right, I could see this being a spot for me where I could at least consider going and being a part of something, because I know what I'm going to get involved in. I know the development is
right.
going to be there. And you can't look at anybody on the offensive side of the ball and be like, man, he came in looking like this, and now that guy's going to shine. Outside of Sam Cosmi, who was what, a 3-star recruit
Yeah.
anyway, that you look at, and you sort of, is this the anomaly? Is this the guy that came in as a 3-star? Is he the Colt McCoy that came in as a 3-star and outshone any projection that developed into this guy just with a little bit of coaching and a little bit of putting on some muscle and filling out your body? Is he the exception to the rule, or is Sam Cosmi actually a product of this system? That's something that I wouldn't be willing to bet much on in terms of it being a part of the development of the system, as much of Sam Cosmi being
Right.
the sort of what's, I don't know the phrase I'm looking for, but he's the one that
Like an
just stands
outlier
out.
kind of.
Outlier.
Yeah.
Perfect.
No, that's just, it is interesting to have this conversation, the different feelings about the defense towards the offense. So it's going to be an interesting final run here through these next few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it'll be good to have Mike on and sort of bring this back up, at least to hear his thoughts on this, knowing where we
Yeah.
stand, but to sort of get his thoughts before the next game and sort of see where he envisions this going will be great to see. So hopefully we can work that out to have him on next week and talk about a game that Texas should go in and win handily.
They should, yeah. No, we'll have them on. We'll do a preview for the Kansas game and get that going next week. But yeah, man, I think we can call it here. That's been good. Good, nice laid back bye week discussion. And yeah, I was gonna say, we'll don't have to worry about Texas, with the bye week, all the 15 or 16 games or whatever that have been postponed this week because of COVID. Don't have to worry about the Texas game being one that's put on the shelf. So we'll see what next week brings. So I don't know. Does Kansas play today?
That's a whole other discussion. We could go another hour on that. I don't know. I don't even know if Kansas is playing.
It looks like Kansas is off
ESPN
this
Plus
week.
They
are off this week, so we should be. We'll see. All systems go for a game next Saturday, but we'll take it one day at a time. So
yeah, no, let's just try to go 1-0 today. All right.
Yep, just like Coach says, let's go 1-0 today.
Let's just do it today, man. Let's do it. And hey, and all of you guys that stuck around through this whole show, thanks for listening. You just went 1-0 today in my book.
That's right. You're 1-0 to me. That's
And to be honest, that shouldn't matter. But I mean that's all that matters. I mean,
yeah. Go 1-0 in my book.
Just go 1-0.
Oh man, well it's been good, man. Let's get this going next week. Try to get Mike on, do a Kansas preview, and get ready for the home stretch this season. So
good stuff, man. Good show. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week. Peace.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. See ya.
ATX representing Fatal, baby.
Falling on 6 on a Saturday. Can